Order! Order! You are an incorrigible delinquent at times. Behave yourself, man!
Speaking of cabinet unity, there's a distinct lack of it in this morning's papers. The Fleet Street Hounds have caught the scent of a good old-fashioned Tory feud over Europe. And it's only week one of the referendum campaign. With the party even more divided than the cabinet, they're clearly not going to be short of material. The Sunday Times says David Cameron has been warned that he'll face a leadership challenge if he doesn't call a halt to so-called blue-on-blue attacks by fellow Conservatives. The Sunday Telegraph reports on the battle of wills between the two sides, with pieces by David Cameron and Ian Duncan Smith, who say, quote, that they can sack me, but Europe goes over everything. The Observer leads with Number 10's main message, which is to say that a British exit would spark decades of economic limbo. And the Mail on Sunday says the Tory feud turned really nasty after Foreign Secretary Philip Hammond had what it calls a meltdown with a Tory Eurosceptic MP. So it seems fair to say the relations between David Cameron and Eurosceptics in his party aren't exactly cordial. The Welfare Secretary, Ian Duncan Smith, one of the cabinet ministers arguing to leave, was asked about it on the Andrew Marr Show.
You don't think the Prime Minister's much of a patriot, do you?
Well, I don't see, for the In campaign, this is not about personalities, the In campaign's whole strategy seems to be about, oh, it's terrible, hang on to nurse for fear of something worse.
Talking down Britain.
It's been about saying, basically, we're too small, we're too little, we're too inconsequential, we can't do what we want. I don't know why anybody would want to run a country like this. This country is the greatest on earth.
Ian Duncan Smith there, I think probably the first time when a cabinet minister has been asked if the Prime Minister is a patriot, that he doesn't get a reply yes. Is Mr Cameron getting the tone, the content of this right?
Well, I think he did make a big mistake earlier this week when he lashed out at Boris Johnson in the Commons. I think that there was a certain degree of over-interpreting those comments. I understand that, you know, there was a fuss about whether or not Cameron had slighted Boris Johnson's personal life with a reference to knowing couples that had divorced.
Mr Cameron felt slighted because he thought he had Boris in the bag.
Well, he was certainly bruised by that. That comment about the marriage went over Boris's head. He wasn't aware that there was a slight there. So there's a bit of over-interpreting, I think, by people on all sides. But the problem for Cameron is if he's being called on to stop the blue-on-blue attacks, he's the one that started them.
I mean, we always knew this was going to be difficult for the Tories, that Europe is just another word for division in the Tory party. But it would almost seem with the manner and the tone and the content of what the Prime Minister is saying that he's almost going out of his way to upset those who are opposed to him.
I disagree. I think the grievances against Cameron in the papers today are completely spurious. It has not been a blue-on-blue campaign so far, not a huge amount of animosity and poison so far, although it's early days. And do they expect him not to play the economic risk card? Do they expect him to go through the next 4 months not using the single most devastating line of attack he has against the other side, which is the unknown, the economic hazard of taking a punt on Brexit? It's unrealistic.
But that argument would be true whether or not, even if he had brought back the store from Brussels or brought back nothing from Brussels. The economic arguments, this could be a profound shock to the world economy, Mr. Osborne, that we'll end up in economic limbo. That's either true or not true, regardless of the settlement.
But that isn't the given reason for their frustration with him at the moment. At the moment, what they're focusing on is the tone, the negativity, supposedly.
And you don't think they've got a right to feel aggrieved?
No, because it would be absolutely bizarre for a Prime Minister to lead a campaign in favour of staying in without deploying the single most effective line.
The danger is what George Osborne is doing with this economic argument is what he did in the general election, which is having one very crude, simple argument. In the general election, it's Labour's not credible. In this campaign, it is that it is a leap in the dark. But the problem is he does need to be careful. I mean, the idea that the world economy is going to tank because Britain leaves the European Union, that Britain leaving the European Union is up there with the Chinese falling growth, is absurd. What did George Osborne do? He got the G20 finance ministers to write that into their conclusions. Yes, it will be a challenge for the British economy if we leave the European Union.
Could be a challenge for the European Union too.
Indeed, but the idea that it's sort of up there as a global risk that's going to lead to some great world economic depression, I think he needs to be careful. He's got to ensure that what he does has credibility, and I'm not sure that passes the credibility test.
I mean, I think what annoys a lot of the Tories is that they're now using arguments about staying in, which have always been true, regardless of whether or not the settlement that the Prime Minister's done makes any difference. And to say that if we came out there would be a profound economic shock, as Nick's saying, that's true, regardless of the settlement. And I think that's what annoys a lot of the Eurosceptics. They're using arguments that were true 6 months ago.
Yeah, and many of the arguments are very thin. I mean, we see David Cameron has written for the Sunday Telegraph today saying that he can describe exactly what people will be voting for if they vote to stay in. Well, it's the status quo. It's not very difficult to describe that. I think it's very frustrating for Eurosceptics that there's this constant spurious claim by the In campaign that they cannot describe what out looks like. They describe what out looks like every single day.
Well, the problem is that under our good friend Article 50 of the Lisbon Treaty, the exit people cannot guarantee what the deal will be. They can say it might be this and it might be that, but they can't guarantee it because we're out of the European Council the moment that we press that Brexit button.
You wonder whether either side can guarantee what this country will be like, whether we stay in or come out.